In the box you get a board. Double-sided skill tokens depicting talent level on one side and master level on the other. Destiny and story tokens, which range from 1 to 10. You get a morning, a noon, and a night token. 6 character standees with their corresponding tokens, such as the character token, origin token, destination, wealth, story, destiny, and 3 quest tokens. 2 regular 6-sided dice, 1 special destiny die, 6 player reference boards, a deck of quest cards, a deck of treasure cards, a deck of status cards, a deck of encounter cards, a reaction matrix booklet, a book of tales, and the rulebook. First thing you want to do in Tales of Arabian Nights, set the board out in front of everybody. Next, each player will receive a character standee in their color, along with a destination token, an origin token, a wealth token, a destiny token, story token, 3 quest tokens, and the character's sex token with their name on it. You will place the character's token with their sex in the circle here on the player board. Next, we will take the character tokens and place them at Baghdad. Next, each player will place their wealth token on Poor. Each player will also place their destiny tokens on the destiny track here, where it says destiny before the number 1. They will also place their story tokens where it says story here before the number 1. Next, we will shuffle the quest deck and hand 1 card to each player. They will place that card face up in front of them. You will then resolve any text on your quest card. In this case, the player has to roll a die to determine what city they will be traveling to. In this case, Herat. Other quests, as in case of the merchant, has one of your opponents place several of these quest tokens on certain areas along the board. Next, each player will choose a secret number of story points and destiny points that they want to accomplish before they can declare themselves the winner of the game. It's recommended that you start off with a combination of 20 points, whether it be 10 story points and 10 destiny points, or 13 story points and 7 destiny points, any combination that equals up to 20. For a shorter game, you can reduce that number, and of course for a longer game, you can, add to that number. They then take the tokens for each point worth value and place them face down on their player mat. Or if they choose to, they could place them underneath their player mat. These will be kept secret from all players. Now, as you can see on the player mat, there's available skills. Each player in turn will choose one of these skill tokens until they have reached 3 skills. Now, they could do this randomly, or they could decide on which skills they wish to take. When you start the game, you want to have your skill tokens face up on the talent side. Once each player has taken a quest card, you will shuffle the remaining of the deck and place it face down next to the board. You will also shuffle the treasure deck and place that next to the board, along with the encounter deck. Next to the encounter deck, you will take the morning token and place that beside the encounter deck. Finally, you will take your status deck and place that face up next to the board. Now you can separate this between each individual status, or you could just keep it in one pile and place it next to the deck, and then sort through the deck when you need to go for a certain status card. Players will roll a die to see who goes first. Whoever has the highest number on the die goes first. If you are playing with more than 2 players, you will pass the Book of Tales to the player on the left of the active player, and you will pass the reaction matrix to the player on the right of the active player. If you are playing a game with 1 or 2 players, you simply just give both books to the opposite player, and you are ready to play Tales of the Arabian Nights. Now, the object of Tales of the Arabian Nights is to be the first player to accomplish their secret victory point goal, which is a combination of story points and destiny points. Okay, you then have to return to Baghdad and survive one last encounter to be the winner. Other players have one last turn to try and catch up and accomplish their victory point conditions. Now, the game is broken up into 2 phases. The first phase is the movement phase, and then we have the encounter phase. If we look at the top of the board here, we have a wealth track. Okay, now this will go up. Your tokens will move up and down this wealth track according to the encounters you encounter. Okay, you can never go below beggar, and you can never go above princely to fabulous unless you have at least 1 treasure. And we'll get to treasure cards and how they work in a minute. This wealth track also depicts how your character will move across the board. Here in the brash looking track here, we have land movement, and below that we have sea movement. Every player will start off at poor at the beginning of the game with their wealth. That means they can move 3 spaces by land, or 2 spaces by sea, or a combination of both, as long as they don't exceed one number or the other, and they cannot combine the 2 numbers. Meaning, a player could go 1 spot by land and then 2 spots by sea, but they could not go 3 spots by land and then 2 spots by sea for a total of 5 spots. They cannot exceed their fastest track, which is land in this case, and they cannot exceed the movements in their slowest track, meaning sea. So they could not take 3 movements by sea, and they cannot go above 3 movements on land. But they can combine these. Land spaces are depicted by these dotted lines, and sea spaces are depicted by these blue solid lines. So the green player can move 3 spaces by land if she chose to. 1, 2, 3. She could also combine her land and sea movement to move a total of 3 spaces, as long as she doesn't go above 2 movements by sea. So she could go 1 sea movement, 2 sea movements, and then 1 by land, for a total of 3 movements. She could not, however, go 1, 2, 3 movements by sea, even though her land track gives her 3 movement points. Hope I made that clear. Okay? Now, as you can see, there are different color and symbols on the board. First, we'll go with these buildings. Okay? There are different types of buildings, but they all represent a city. Okay? Here we have a city in Arabia. Here in Rome, we have a city that looks like a castle, but it's still considered a city. Here in India, we have another building that looks like a Chinese temple, but it's still considered a city. You'll also notice these different colored jewels on the board. We have gray, which represents mountains, green, which represents forest, blue, which represents sea, yellow, which represents desert, and finally, like a turquoise color, which represents islands. There are also places of power. These are always named, such as the City of Brass, and they always have an arrow pointing away from them. These cannot be moved to by normal means of movement. In order to go to these places of power, you must have a card that will allow you to enter that place. Once you have received that card, you can place a destination token on the place of power, and you can move your character in there like any normal space. Once you have completed your encounter at one of these places of power, you will automatically move wherever the arrow points to away from that place of power. If you have a destination token on a place of power and an encounter or other card removes that destination token and places it somewhere else on the board, then the old destination is considered lost and you cannot encounter that space. Also take note that some spaces on the board have numbers, and this will take play with the encounter phase, which we'll get to in a second. Once a player finishes her movement, they will draw an encounter card and refer to the paragraph on the encounter card. Now there's three different types of encounter cards. There's the city encounter card, and the paragraph you would refer to is down here in the bottom in the gold square symbol there. You have a character encounter card, and depending on what time of the day it is, you would refer to that paragraph. During the setup of the game, you notice we placed the morning symbol next to the encounter cards. That represents it is morning, so you would go to paragraph 85 in this case. And the final card is the terrain type. The terrain type will tell you which paragraph you need to go to depending on what terrain you are on. Once you have determined which paragraph to go to, you will take your book of tales. You would refer to the corresponding paragraph on the card. In the case of Ape Island here, it would be paragraph 55. You will then roll one die, seeing what result you have, to refer to the reaction matrix. Now there's some modifiers to this die that you roll for the reaction matrix. First, most locations have a number on it. If you are on a location that does have a number on it, you would add that number to your die result. So in this case, we would add 2 to the 1 pip on the die result for a total of 3. We also have to refer to the destiny track. Once we have reached 3 points of destiny, we would add 1 to the die result. Once we have reached 5 points on the destiny track, we would add 2 points to the die roll. So from 3 and 4, we would add 1 point to the die result, and then from 5 on, we would add 2 to the die result. So being that the green player is at 0 destiny, we would add 2 to the die result of 1, which would give us 3. So then we would look here in the paragraph, and we would see it says disguised hunchback C. We would go to the reaction matrix and go to table C. Now as you can see, there are reaction options here that a player will choose to take during the encounter. Okay, so we would read out what these options are, and the player would say something like follow. You would then go down to disguised, which is the name of number 3 here, disguised hunchback. So we go to disguise and then go down to follow, and where the 2 lines intersect, we would go to that section of the book. Okay, in this case it is 471. However, before we do that, the player must roll their destiny die. Okay, if it is a plus, they would add 1 to the paragraph they are going to. If it's a minus, they would subtract 1. If it were blank, they would just stay there at the same. So this player has +1, so we would go to 471 plus 1, which would give us 472. Okay, and now if we look here at 472, we can see there is a line of text which tells the player what the adventure is. And then we have 2 paragraphs here, one that says no skill, and then one that has beguiling, stealth, and stealing. If the active player has either one of these skills, you would read this paragraph. If they do not have either one of those skills, you would read the paragraph with no skill. And then depending on the outcome of the adventure you have just completed, you will have either a benefit or a negative effect. Okay, and this is listed here in these brackets. So if this player here were to successfully complete this no skilled section here, they would lose 1 destiny point and gain 1 story point. So the green player would gain 1 story point and they would lose 1 destiny point. However, this player does not have any destiny points, so she cannot lose any destiny points. You would then pass the book of tales to the next player, along with the reaction matrix, and the next player would take their turn, starting with the movement phase. Let's look at the cards a little bit here. Alright, so first we have these character cards. Okay, so it'll give you the name of the character, and then below that it'll give you 3 numbers and 3 symbols. The first symbol here on the left means it is morning, and you would refer to paragraph 85. The next one means it is midday, and you would refer to paragraph 90. And the following symbol here means it's night, and you would refer to paragraph 98. What that means is when you start the game, you will start at morning. That's what this token here means. Throughout the game, you will draw these encounter cards and either keep them or discard them, depending on your choice. Once all the encounter cards have been used up and there is no more to draw from, you will shuffle the discard pile and create a new encounter deck. You will also remove the morning token from next to the encounter deck and replace it with the noon token. And then once you have done that process again, you would replace the noon with the night token. If you have to shuffle the deck one more time and it is night, you just keep it at the night token. The next card we have is terrain. When you draw this encounter card, you would simply refer to the location type on the card that corresponds with the location that your character is on. So in this case, the green player is on the forest area. She would refer to the forest icon on the card. Now on these location cards, one location usually has an N on it. In that case, you would simply go to the reaction matrix and go to the N table on the reaction matrix to the appropriate line that corresponds with the card. In this case, it's Ape Island. You would then give the active player their options to react to. In this case, avoid, piety, attack, bargain, examine, enter, seek aid or aid. And then you would, match up the two lines and go to the corresponding paragraph in the Book of Tales. Once you are done with either the character or the terrain type, the location card, you would discard them. The last encounter card is the city card. Now the city card's broken up a little different. Up top there is a mini map of the board with a spot on it that tells you where this city is located on the board. Below that is artwork of the city and some of its surrounding area. Then below that are some options. And finally, we have a number in a golden box down at the bottom middle of the card. That golden box is what you would refer to do your encounter. That number is the paragraph you would look up in the Book of Tales. Now, once you complete that encounter, you have the option of saving this city card. And then when you travel to the city and complete an encounter in the city, you can roll a die and try to gain whatever effects is listed on the city card. Okay? So in the case of Adrianople, if the player were to go to Adrianople, complete an encounter there, they can then roll a die and gain whatever benefit it is. So in this case, they would receive 1 treasure. They would then take a treasure and place it next to their player mat. Okay, and then once they have utilized the card, they would discard it. Throughout the game, if you succeed your encounter, you will gain different types of benefits, or sometimes negative benefits. These are indicated in these brackets. If it has a D in it, it means to refer to your destiny track. You would move your destiny token however many spots along the track that the book tells you to. If it has an S on it, it's referring to the story track. You would move your story token however many spots up the track that the book tells you. If it has a W on it, it is referring to your wealth track. And you would move your token up or down the wealth track according to the result. If it has no symbol next to it between the letter and the number, it means you would add. If there is a minus sign, you would subtract. So in this case, your destiny would go up 1, your wealth would go down 1. If there is a word that is italicized, it would refer to the status deck. In that case, you would get the status that appears on the result. In this case, beloved. You would then take that, put it next to your player mat, and this card will take effect from this turn onward until you can lose the status. Okay, now a special note with the beloved card. If the encounter says you are to marry somebody of the same sex, you instead take a beloved card instead of a marriage card. Now usually status cards are not good, but sometimes they can be helpful. Sometimes it will reward you with treasure. You would simply then draw a treasure card and place it next to your player mat. Now with the treasure cards, they usually give you some kind of advantage. And at the end of your turn, if you are in a city and you complete an encounter, you can choose to sell this treasure to gain wealth. To do this, you would simply take note of the number in the top left corner of the card and then move your wealth token up to corresponding numbers. Take note that they have a maximum wealth level down at the bottom. And then you would discard the treasure card. Okay, next there are skills. These are listed next to the story and destiny rewards, in which case you would draw from the skill bank that type of skill. So in this case, it would be piety. You would then take that skill token and place it with the talent side up, not the master side up. Okay? Now skills can help you during your encounters, but not as much as you may think. Okay, certain encounters will have mandatory next to the skill. Okay, that means you must have that skill in order to encounter that particular paragraph. Now throughout the game, certain encounters will allow you to upgrade your skills from talent to master. Okay, you would then flip it over to this side here, the more gold side. If you have mastered a skill, then before you roll the destiny die to determine which encounter you will take, the person reading will look above and below the encounter that you have drawn initially and see if that skill is listed. So in this case, weapon use is listed above 520 which is what the initial encounter was. Before you roll the destiny die, that person will give you the option of taking that particular encounter. Now, they cannot reveal if it will benefit you in any way, but they can say this encounter has your skill on it. Okay? If they choose not to, if the player chooses not to do that particular encounter, they would roll the destiny die and follow the results. In this case, instead of doing 520, they would do 521 because of the plus symbol. Again, if there are no skills listed in the encounter that you have, you would go to the no skill section and resolve that section. Now, once you have completed your quest, you will gain any benefits that that quest will allow you, and then discard the quest card. And you can draw a new quest card and start a new quest. You do not have to finish a quest card in order to win the game, but they help you accumulate wealth, story points, and destiny points. So the game continues from player to player, going back and forth between movement and encounter until one player reaches their victory point condition, at which time they must go to Baghdad. They must survive one encounter, and then they can declare themselves the winner. Everybody else will have one more turn to try and catch up, and whoever has the most successful story will win. And that's how you play Tales of the Arabian Nights.